So we're opened in our 13 Colonies Social Studies magazine to page 2 and 3, The Seeds of a New Nation. So, like I said, I have to have my teacher edition up on the screen because for some reason the website isn't letting me pull up your student magazine. All right, The Seeds of a New Nation. Now, 5th grade, what new nation do you think our magazine's talking about?
America.
America. Max, is that what you were going to say? America, yes. Follow along with me, 5th grade, as we read the top part. The Seeds of a New Nation. Early settlers risked their lives to set up new homes in unfamiliar territory. Every day they worked to survive. Just a generation later, their work paid off. 13 English colonies began to grow and flourish on North American soil. Do you guys remember how all of those countries were like fighting for land in America? England ended up establishing 13 colonies. Yep. England was kind of doing this already, but they really started to claim land. Roads began to connect one village to the next. People learned how to make it through the winter. Trade between the colonies began, and a reliable economy developed. So remember, economy is what makes money flow through a community, from getting paid to then spending it in a store, and the store making money, and the people in the store putting that back out into the economy. Life was still hard for colonists. So a colonist is someone who lived in one of these colonies. Illness and hostile Native Americans still claimed colonists' lives. Now, why were the Native Americans hostile, 5th grade? Why were they hostile? Mackenzie?
Because the British and all the other people came in and just took their land.
Yes. So Native Americans were hostile because the colonists did take their land. Yep, they took their land. And winters were still long and harsh in the northern colonies. Survival, however, was no longer a surprise. Families planted their roots, and a new nation began to sprout. Who would like to come over and read on that zoomed-in picture or map caption? Max, come on over. So it says the colonies' first towns. Right here. Go ahead.
The colonies' first towns and cities were near the coast. Being able to reach the sea was important for their life and travel. They relied on ships from Europe to bring supplies and more colonies. It was only after roads were built and the colonies' populations began to grow that towns and settlements could survive.
Awesome. So 5th grade, before the roads were built, they could only travel by sea. So all these colonies are along the ocean. Now, once the roads were built, then they were able to travel to and from the colonies, and then they were able to move further inland into America. What, Jack? By boat. By sea, by boat. Yep. So then up top, it says, when settlers first arrived, Native American tribes often started trading with them. Native Americans received European knives, axes, weapons, fish hooks, and cooking utensils in exchange for furs, which the settlers wanted. The Iroquois in the Northeast put more effort into trapping so they could trade furs for European goods. 5 Iroquois nations that made up the League of the Iroquois struck deals with English settlers. 5th grade, why would English settlers or colonists want fur so bad? Raise your hand. Why would they want fur so bad? Why would they want it? Eosius?
Because they could use it as a coat or clothing.
Exactly. The English colonists were not used to having harsh winters. So in the American colonies, the winters were harsher. So they would use the fur as a coat or a blanket to stay warm. Also, do you think they could then trade or sell those furs that they got from the Iroquois?
Yeah.
Yes. Who could come over and read the top caption on page 3 where it says, "Don't forget I'm in charge"? Let's have, we're going to call down in a while. Emmy, why don't you come on over? Nice and loud for us, Emmy.
How much do you think European governments could control what happened on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean? If you guess not much, you're right. In fact, most European governments left control of the colonies to governors.
Mm-hmm.
European monarchs appointed.
Yes,
Um,
the governors.
the governors, men who owned property, elected to
Representatives.
representatives who sit on
Colonial.
colonial legislatures, such as assembly, worked both to limit the governor's power and help support colonists.
Awesome. So, 5th grade, do you think Britain enjoyed just letting colonies do whatever they wanted? No. So that is why they established governors. A governor was elected to kind of keep an eye on things since the king couldn't be there. We still have governors today, right? Every single state has a governor. And so they work together to kind of let our federal government know what's happening in their state. This started by having governors in the colonies. Yes, Mackenzie.
On the thing, they needed lots of clothes because in England, if you go up to the mountains, you would just barely get a centimeter of snow. And you would also get,
and we get a
they came here to very cold.
Yes, it is a big culture change. We get a lot more snow, we get a lot more cold. Yes, Jackie?
If you also climb a mountain, and if you have nothing to do up there, you also need blankets to survive.
You're very right. So the farther north you get, the more blankets you want. So those governors, you guys, were kind of like the people keeping an eye on things for the British government. Yes, for the monarchy. So being so far away from Europe, the colonies were able to give colonists more democratic freedoms. Many colonists insisted on religious freedom. Colonists also established trade between colonies in an early example of a free market. In a free market, people can buy and sell things and services without the government getting involved or setting prices. Now, 5th grade, what do you think would happen if they didn't have a free market? If Britain got to decide how everything was priced and where everything was sold, how would that affect things? Frankie, how would that affect things?
It just go down.
It just go down. Yep.
They have everything go to their country.
Exactly. Do you think Britain, at least in this time, Britain would be wanting the colonies to trade amongst themselves, or would they want them to be trading only with Britain? Only with Britain, so then Britain could get the money. So during this time in our history, you will find the colonists kind of did not agree with a lot of what Britain did, okay? So that was one thing that was good, was that they were allowing them to have free trade. So that's one of the good things. Richie.
For some reason, I can like this magazine from Monopoly.
How?
Because you buy properties, and then you can trade them, you
Yep.
can sell stuff,
Yep.
and yeah.
Exactly. It is kind of like a big game of Monopoly. You're right. But instead of like different places, yep, it's countries. And so 5th grade, this big map that we have here, everything in red, those are the colonies that we're talking about. So we have the 13 colonies, and then you can see like Chickasaw, Creek, Choctaw, Huron, Ojibwa. Those are different Native American tribes on our map as well. Let's go to page 4 and 5. Page 4 and 5. We're going to see if mine loads on the screen. I love that you guys are able to see it with the lights on. That's pretty awesome. Maybe if I zoom out, it'll work. Oh, lovely. All right, we're on page 4 and 5. We're not going to wait for the screen to load. Founding the New England colonies. So one of the very first colonies was the New England colonies. 10 years after the Pilgrims first landed at Plymouth, another group set out from England in search of religious freedom. This group called themselves Puritans. Has anyone heard that term before, Puritans? Okay, Philip, you have? Okay. So they're another group of people who wanted religious freedom. They wanted to be able to practice whatever religion they wanted. Over the course of the next half century, the Puritans played an important role in settling New England. Is New England still there today, 5th grade? Yes. They wanted to practice the religion in their own way, and they didn't put up with outside opinions. Infighting and power struggles were common, so that means fighting within their religion. New settlements and even new colonies grew out of the disagreements in their group. Who can come over and read the caption for the big picture here that starts with King Charles I? Who would like to come over and read that for us? Addie, your hand popped right up. Come on over. So is this the picture that's on the front of our magazine, 5th grade? Yes, it is. All right, come on over and read nice and loud for us, Addie.
King Charles I issued a
Charter
of written grants allowing Puritans to colonize
Massachusetts.
More than 1,000
Puritans. Established the Massachusetts Bay Colony
in 1630. By the mid-1640s, their population had grown to 20,000. In the beginning, only members of their states were allowed to go in the colony. They established laws and
policies
that reflected their religious beliefs.
Awesome. So 5th grade, think about this. They established the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630, and they had a little more than 1,000 people. 10 years later, they had 20,000 people. That's a huge population growth in 10 years, right? Yes. So obviously, would you say a lot of people also wanted religious freedom then?
Yeah.
Yes. That's what Puritans were all about. They wanted religious freedom. Now, if we look up on page 5, where it says Pilgrims and Puritans, you might be thinking, okay, well, Miss E, the Pilgrims also wanted religious freedom. What's different between them? So we can say the Pilgrims saying, we left England and the Netherlands to get away from the Church of England. Then we see the Puritans say, they've got problems, but we're loyal to the Church of England. So the Pilgrims were separatists. That means they wanted to separate completely from the Church of England. The Church of England was headed by the king. The Pilgrims' beliefs were seen as treason. Puritans wanted big changes, but still considered themselves part of the Church of England. So that's the biggest difference between them, 5th grade. The Pilgrims wanted nothing to do with the Church of England. The Puritans, they wanted a lot of changes, but they still wanted to be like under the Church of England. So that's what makes them different from each other. If we look where it says John Winthrop, it says John Winthrop, a Puritan leader, so that's the group that still wanted to be a part of the Church of England, was the first governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. In a sermon he gave on the way to North America, he said the Puritans would provide an example of moral living for the rest of the world. He told his listeners the whole world would be watching them. So, quote, we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us. Now, 5th grade, do you think a lot of British citizens were kind of listening to the news of the colonists and seeing what was happening as they were arriving to the Americas? Yeah. Do you think there were maybe British citizens who were interested in also becoming colonists? Yeah. So they were kind of keeping their eyes, on America, seeing what's happening. Mackenzie.
Actually, when people first went to America, it was mostly the men of the family, and then they would send letters to the other people that they found a place to live.
Yep.
And then they would come.
Exactly. So usually a man of the family, whether it's a husband and father or a son, would travel to America first, and once they kind of got established in the colony or something, then they would send like money over for the rest of their family to come over and live with them. You're exactly right, Mackenzie. Frankie, did you have something? No. Oh, okay. So, what do you do when you don't agree with somebody? The Puritans didn't want anyone to dissent or express a different opinion. Now, do you think that went well? No. Saying, no, you have to believe exactly what we believe. Do you think that went well? No. Probably not. They forced anyone who disagreed with them to leave the colony. One person they kicked out was Anne Hutchinson, who preached different religious views. Her brother-in-law, John Wheelwright, defended her and was forced out too. He eventually helped found Exeter, New Hampshire. So if you didn't believe what they believed, they kicked you out. So then beneath where it says, after Hutchinson was forced out of Massachusetts, others decided to leave too. How many of us have seen that in a movie? Like one person decides to leave a group and then other people follow. How many of you have seen that before?
Like the Lorax, when the guy cuts down all the trees.
Exactly. Kind of like the Lorax when the guy cuts down all the trees. So it usually just takes one person to leave and then others will follow, right? So after she was forced out of Massachusetts, others decided to leave too. Thomas Hooker and John Haynes left Massachusetts and formed the Connecticut colony. But because the Puritans were being so stubborn and saying, you need to believe what we believe, other people were going out and establishing their own colonies. Hooker is called the father of Connecticut. Both Hooker and Haynes helped develop the fundamental orders of Connecticut. This document was based on a sermon that Hooker gave in 1638. The orders were one of the earliest constitutional documents in the colonies. So who were the Puritans? What did they want? Puritanism was a movement for a pure Church of England without any similarities to Catholicism. So they didn't want to be similar to Catholicism at all. Puritans believed in a personal connection to their faith and disagreed with many Catholic practices. They insisted on plain clothing and didn't want positions such as bishops in the church. Then up above, it says, areas near Portsmouth had been settled in 1623 by a group of fishermen under David Thompson. They built a fort and other settlement buildings and named the settlement Panaway Plantation. Later, Portsmouth combined with other settlements to make the New Hampshire colony. So 5th grade, after learning a little bit about Puritans and Pilgrims, I want you to think to yourself, who would you have wanted to join? So remember, the Pilgrims, they wanted to be completely separated from the Church of England. They didn't want any ties to it. The Puritans kind of wanted to be a branch underneath the Church of England. So still connected to it, but not exactly following.
Wait, for the Church of England,
yeah.
Is that like all the queens and kings and stuff?
So ready to rock. 5th grade, during this time, the Church of England, that was the religion you had to agree with and practice if you lived in England. You could be penalized or killed for practicing a different religion. That's why the Pilgrims wanted to separate from them. The Puritans said, well, we still agree with some of what the Church of England believes in, but we want different rules. So they came over and established their own colony. So I want you to think, which one, Pilgrim or Puritan, would you have wanted to be during this time? Turn and talk with the people around you first. Which one and why? I think so. I'm pretty sure it was Catholic, or if it wasn't officially Catholic. I know, it's hard, right? I think it's hard. Max asked a really good question. He asked, Miss E, was the Church of England Catholic? And I said, I'm not sure if they were officially Catholic at this point, but if they weren't, they were pretty close to it. So keeping that in mind, which one would you choose? Yeah. Yeah, they're good. That's right. Because, yeah. Raise your hand if you think you would have been Puritan during this time. Puritan. Okay. Okay. Now, is it just, that's okay. Emmy, what is your reasoning? Why would you want to be Puritan? So what was going through your head when you made that decision? You don't know? Philip?
I would want to be a pilgrim.
Well, not Pilgrim yet. Let's stay on the Puritan. Anyone else? Or if you're, I know the rest of you said Pilgrim, but what might be a reason why someone would want to be a Puritan? What might be a reason? Michael?
Because they want to stay with their religion that they started with.
Okay. A lot of them started within the Church of England. Maybe they still want some sort of connection to that. Any other reasons that you could see someone wanting to be a Puritan? Layla?
Maybe they still want to be Catholic.
Maybe Catholic? Yeah, because it says, that's why I think the Church of England was pretty close to Catholic, because it said the Puritans wanted to move kind of away from the Church of England in order to kind of take away some of the Catholic tradition. So you'd still be a little bit Catholic. Any other reasons for Puritanism? Okay, raise your hand if you would want to be a pilgrim during this time. Keep your hand raised if you'd like to explain why you would want to be a pilgrim. All right. Let's see. Will, why would you want to be a pilgrim?
Because somebody else has more beliefs.
So exactly. When we read about pilgrims, they let people believe what they wanted to believe, right? Puritans, you don't believe exactly what they do, they'll kick you out. Frankie?
Same like kind of with Will. The pilgrims left the Church of England because they didn't want to just do that religion. They wanted to be open, not just one group.
Yep, exactly. Richie, sorry.
I don't want to be Christian because I don't want to be forced to like something.
You don't want to be forced. So it's not necessarily wanting to be a pilgrim, it's you don't want to be a Puritan, right? Okay. Philip, did you have something?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Even if I was like the Puritans,
Yeah.
I would still be a pilgrim because I think everyone should have their own beliefs.
Oh, yeah, you think everyone should have their own beliefs? Awesome. Max? Yeah.
And it's just Puritans that I keep out individual. So if someone go to the
Did some of them go to what? I would assume some of them did join the Pilgrims. Others, like Anne Hutchinson, went off and formed their own colony. So a lot of them did that. They would form a different colony. But yeah, some of them joined the Pilgrims. Any other reasons why you want to be a Pilgrim? Okay. Oh, Frankie, did you have something else? Okay, I thought you were raising your hand. Okay. Nice job today, 5th grade. Here's what we're going to do next.